I'm going to say something, and those of you from Connecticut, I know you know the response to this one. So if you want to unmute and say it, that's good. Love is all there is.
And the rest we make up.
That's right. And the rest we make up. And that means that God is all there is. And that means God and love are it is God. Love is God, God is love, and love is all there is. And we do make up the rest. And it's like if we teach that, we embody that, we work with that, we say that, then how can we, as a question to ask ourselves is, how can we discriminate and say that something or someone is not God? And what about loving ourselves? And that's what Sandy's meditation was about this morning, was what's that chatter that we have in our minds that we talk to ourselves about, where we say anything but loving and kind words sometimes. And how can we put conditions on loving expressions of God that are outside of ourselves, or even on ourselves? And something that came to me, because I'm back in, I actually went to the restaurant where this happened to take my granddaughter for her on her actual birthday, was a couple of years ago. I was here and I took her out. We were returning some clothes that weren't the right size, and exchanging them, and we went to lunch at her favorite restaurant. It's a little ramen place here in Ithaca, New York. And she had left her water bottle there. So I said, "Oh, I'll just sit in the car. I'm going to run in and get it and come back out." And as I came out of the restaurant, somehow I tripped and I fell. Now, a piece of that story that I've not told before is, as I got out of the car, I saw two men standing close, right by that restaurant, and they were arguing. And they were two men that my ego mind immediately went to, I don't know that I would want to talk to them. They seem pretty scary. And so I go in the restaurant and I come out, and what I didn't know, the whole thing about love here is that these two men saw me falling, stopped their argument. They came over, they tried to catch me, but they were right there to help me get up the moment I fell. They were right there. They were making sure I was okay. My granddaughter came out of the car. They helped her. They were so loving and so kind. And I had been so judgmental, as in that, just that instant. It was just an instant to walk in. And so today, as I'm looking at love is all there is, what what was it? What was it? How could I put conditions on that? Just because they looked the way they looked and the way they were talking. And it was just really interesting to me to go back to that restaurant and have that all brought back to me as I'm preparing for this talk about love. Because there were so many lessons I learned from that, from breaking that knee. And now I've learned another one, and that is loving kindness. And this month of August, we are going to be looking at all the many different aspects of love, of loving ourselves, of loving others. This is a month of love. And so the intent today is to look at some foundations to love, if you will. And how do we become this loving presence that can see through that human exterior? And something that I heard one of our guest speakers here say one day that has really, really resonated with me is that we are spiritual beings, and we've heard this before. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. That never really resonated with me. as much as this. We are spiritual beings having a spiritual experience in human form. And it's the human form that of us that suffers, and it is the human form that can change. And it is the human form that is the who we are, and the what we are is love. And can we really live? Can we really live where we are being that presence of love 24/7? Well, there's a book called Teachings on Love by Thich Nhat Hanh, and a lot of this talk comes from that book. And in it, Thich Nhat Hanh says that the Buddha taught that it is possible to live 24 hours a day in a state of love. Every moment, every glance, every thought, and every word can be infused with love. And what I know from both what the readings that Sandy did today, and everything within Ernest Holmes' teachings, the teachings, if I go outside of that, and this whole concept of this greater love that we are goes way back, even before Socrates. This concept of this love that is beyond discrimination, beyond, Rumi says it so beautifully, I'll meet you in that field. This goes beyond good and evil, good and bad. This is our work. And it is so important today as there's this great divide seems to be happening around us, that we become that presence of love, that we understand that love. And that it's a really great idea to say, I'm going to be loved 24/7. I'm going to be there, be it all the time. Easy to say, oh, challenging and sometimes daunting to actually practice that. Because we are human. We are the spiritual being having a human experience, having that human time here. And sometimes I don't like algorithms on social media, and sometimes I do. And this morning I was very grateful because I opened up, I forget what it was I opened up. I think I opened up YouTube. And this short was presented to me, and it was someone who, when he was a child, could not experience, even on television, because his parents didn't allow TV or rock music or anything. He did not was not able to experience the aid concert that was back in the I think it was 1980s, that raised millions of dollars to help starving people in Ethiopia. And it was like a Woodstock. It was the Woodstock for what he said. It was the Woodstock for Gen X. And he had the privilege of interviewing the man who pulled that all together. And what he was saying is that we as a society right now have been told by some high profile people that empathy is the weakness of humanity. And what he is saying, and Buddha says, and Ernest Holmes says, and just think of anyone who is in that more enlightened state, what this man said, and I apologize, I didn't write his name down. What he says is that empathy is the glue that holds humanity together. And that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're talking about this month, is love. Love as that expression of empathy and sympathy and loving kindness. And what I want to focus on today is that in the Buddhist tradition, there are what's called the four immeasurable minds. And it's the four elements of true love. And it's a practice to achieve, to keep you in line with loving love as who you are, of what you are. And it's a way to practice being greater expression of love, that greater expression of God in every day. And the four elements are loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And this is not some static state, some goal to attain, but it is a daily practice and exercises that become part of our spiritual practice, something that we do all the time, not, well, I'm going to set aside an hour today and be in loving kindness. It's something to keep us in that questioning ourselves, am I there 24/7 if that's what we choose to do? And it allows us to make our lives more open and more available to be that love and in therefore the law that says yes every day. And it can just launch us into such a much deeper understanding and embodiment of what love is. It's from Sandy's reading. The person who has learned to love all people, no matter who they are, will find plenty of people who will return that love. And that we need to instill in our minds this fundamental concept that good is without bounds. And it is good, and this good and loving kindness that will follow us all the days of our lives. Or as Martin Luther King says, that only love, the light, can take away the darkness, can take away the hate. So again, in his book, Thich Nhat Hanh says, if we learn ways to practice love, compassion, joy, and equanimity, we will know how to heal the illness of anger, sorrow, insecurity, sadness, hatred, loneliness, and unhealthy attachments. That's a big order. So let's take a look at these four elements. So loving kindness is the desire to offer happiness. The desire to offer happiness. It's intention and the capacity to offer joy and happiness. That's loving kindness, is that intention to do that. And to develop that capacity, what we can do is practice looking and listening deeply. And when we listen deeply, when we listen beyond what the words that we are hearing, we can know better what to do or not to do to make others happy. And that's not in exclusion of ourselves, as you'll find out when we talk about compassion. And a suggestion of a practice that I can do on my own is just whenever I find myself questioning or seeing suffering, or is to say something like, may all beings experience acceptance, trust, sufficiency, and safety. And say that not only when it feels easy to say, but say it when it feels difficult to say. The next is compassion, and that's a desire to remove suffering from other people. And it's this deep concern that we have, and that when we see someone suffering, we can quietly say to ourselves, if we are not feeling to move, to go and sit with that person, we can say, I see your struggle and suffering. I have also struggled and suffered, and I extend my heart of care to you, and may your struggle and suffering pass soon. And if we feel ourselves able to do it, we can just sit and listen. Just listen to that person. And don't forget the compassion for yourselves. And Sandy, that was why your meditation this morning was so pertinent for me, because it had us look at that. It had us look at loving kindness and compassion for ourselves. Because when we can do it for ourselves, the more we can be that way for ourselves, the more we can do it for others. We can only give from what we already have. And joy is the third. And that's the desire to bring joy to all the people around you and allowing their happiness to bring you joy. And one easy practice on that, which is just such a wonderful suggestion. I love this one, is to, when you wake up and you're in that twilight of sleep and waking up, is just say, what joy may come to me today? Just open yourselves up to what joy may come to me today. And then be open to that possibility of joy. Then the fourth one is equanimity. And in reading this, and I understand where Thich Nhat Hanh was coming from, because it could easily it could be interpreted as being cold or not caring about others, but it's a desire to accept everything and to not discriminate. And the word for equanimity in Sanskrit, in Sanskrit is oh gosh, upeksha. And when you take the two pieces of that word, it means over and to look. So we climb the mountain to look over a whole situation so that we're not bound on either side of it. And so equanimity is accepting that we are all equal, that there's no one above or below us. It's one of the things I gained from reading what Thich Nhat Hanh said about this was it's being in that state of not humility in the negative sense, but being humble, of understanding that others are also spiritual beings having human experience. And a thing that really resonated with me on this is if the love we have has an attachment to it, or discrimination, or prejudice, or clinging, that's not really what he's talking about with true love. And an example of that is, we've all pretty much experienced some pretty hot weather lately. And if you were sitting outside and you suddenly felt a cool breeze, just think of how refreshing that is. That this summer breeze just comes out of nowhere and it just feels so refreshing. If we were to try to take that summer breeze and put it in some kind of a container and keep it just for ourselves, that's what he's talking about. That's what we're talking about. That's what Buddha was talking about on attachment or clinging to. But it's allowing that breeze to continue on and have its own joy and have its own compassion for others, and that loving kindness to cool others around us. And this reminded me of a story, and it's from it's from Plato, where there was a group of people. There was a group of people who their food was they were in a circle, in a deep bowl around them, and to get to it, you had to scoop down with a spoon. And the spoons were greater than the diameter of the circle. And so all these people kept trying to feed themselves with these big spoons, and they couldn't get it to their own mouths. And that group starved. Another group of people in that same situation realized that the spoons reached people across from them. And so what they did is they practiced the loving kindness, the compassion, the joy, and the equanimity, and they scooped it out and fed the person across from them. And guess what? Everyone got fed. Everyone got fed. And that's what the person who put together the Live Aid concert was talking about, is that empathy, that compassion, that love, that joy, that is the glue that holds humanity together. Ernest Holmes goes on to say, this is in Science of Mind on page 246. We are surrounded by perfect life and poised in an eternal calm. We are in a sea of untroubled waters of life from which we may freely drink. We must do the drinking. No one else can do this for us. We should hold out the cup of acceptance until it is filled and overflowing with the manifestations of our desires. This chalice of the heart is held up that the heavenly flow may fill it with God's abundant life. So, acceptance is a key to all of this. When we can accept life as it is right now, and we can come from gratitude for what is and move forward with loving kindness, compassion, joy, and the concept of equanimity, we can ask ourselves, where in my life am I not accepting life as it unfolds? And that doesn't say that doesn't say that we accept what it is and just don't do anything about it. But what it does when we accept it, when we realize that this is what our experience is, we can then go inside and we can look at what is it about me? What is it about the thinking that I have that is bringing this experience into my life? And when we start doing that, when we are willing to say yes to life as it is, even when it's uncomfortable and painful, it opens us up to a freedom to be open to, because we let go of the resistance, we let go of the judgment, and the inner turmoil dissipates, and we allow love to come in, and solutions, ways to work with what life is in this moment right now, come from places that we would never have been able to even think of, except when we open ourselves up to love. When we open ourselves up to seeing all, and as I like to say it, seeing with God's eyes, hearing with God's ears, and speaking with God's voice. And I'm not talking about the guy up on the cloud. I'm talking about the God that lives within each and every one of us, that is in wherever you feel it may reside in your own body. I always go right here to my heart chakra, just knowing that the love that God is not just limited to that in my body, that it is every cell of my body. It's every organ, it's every cell, it's every atom, it's all the space in between the atoms. Love is there. And what our job is, if you will, is to more freely and fully express that. So what I'm asking each and every one of us is to actively practice love. Love is an action verb. And we practice it because all living beings need our love. Remember, it's the glue that holds humanity together. It's the glue that holds creation together, because it is the essence of it is love that is creating everything. So love is in everything. And so it is us practicing this true love, looking at our prejudices, looking at our whatever discrimination or attachment that we have, or how we may be trying to take that refreshing summer breeze and contain it so that it stays with us forever rather than moving on. So what can I do is we can seek places and relationships and groups of people like here at CSL Metro, where we can intentionally practice loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And what I challenge all of us, myself too, and I am going to use the word challenge because it feels like a challenge, is to go outside of our comfort zone and confront the edges of our capacity to love. Because when we do that, it creates an expansion of the love that we are. And an example of that was I bought this little car for my 2-year-old grandson that is supposed to be propelled by a balloon. And you know, the first time you blow up a balloon, it's this big, and then you let the air out, and then you blow it up again, and you start um, going to those edges, confronting those edges, if you will, of our capacity. And the balloon gets bigger and bigger and bigger each time. Only the balloon of love won't pop. You're not going to overfill it with anything. It will continue to grow. It will always grow. I had a young mother ask me how she had one child and she was ready to have, she found out she was pregnant with another one, and she goes, "How can there be enough love for 2 children?" And I said, "Because love grows. Love grows." I have 3 sons and I have 4 grandchildren, and there's talk of maybe a couple more grandchildren. And I'm like super excited because all of that's just going to let my love grow even more. And I will tell you, when I went to that restaurant, I looked at one of the men was the proprietor of a business next door to this restaurant. And I wanted to go in and thank him. I wanted to thank him for his loving kindness that he showed me, that he and his friend or not friend, whoever he was talking to, have in a very interesting argument. I wanted to thank him, but his store was closed. So what I did is I just sat there and I just poured love into that building, just letting him know, just letting God know, letting myself know how grateful I was that someone was right there to help me up off the sidewalk and help me get to my car. And that's practicing love. I confronted the edge of my capacity to love and wanted to reach out to him. So practice love, practice it when it's easy, practice it when it's difficult. And I will put in a plug for our practitioners because they can help you. If you want to expand your love capacity and you aren't sure how to do it, connect up with one of our practitioners. They're all there. They all know how to hold you in the highest consciousness and see that love in you and help you guide you to find the love in yourself. And so in closing, I want to leave you with several quotes. I couldn't decide which ones, so I'm going to give them all to you. 2 of them are from the Dalai Lama. And what the Dalai Lama says is love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. He also says when we feel love and kindness towards others, it not only makes others feel loved and cared for, but it helps us to develop our inner happiness and peace. Yes, that's my experience. And what Ernest Holmes says is that compassion and caring are the ties that bind us together in mutual understanding and in the unified attempt to uncover the divinity in each other. Compassion is the most gentle of all human virtues, for it is the outpouring of the divine givingness through all. So just remember, when we practice love that includes loving kindness, compassion, joy, equanimity, we go into that empathetic state, and that what we are doing is we are looking to uncover the divinity not only in ourselves, but in each other. And the more of that we uncover, the more we can reach what Buddha said, that we can be doing this 24 hours a day. This, we can be in love and the world can be in love. So join me on our challenge this week of practicing love, and know that I love each and every one of you. Namaste.